Chapter 6. The Lost Diadem. 3-foot-long quills as soft as smoke stood in vases like flower stems. Thick spiderwebs coated in dust looked like delicate lace. Towering shelves loomed above them, flanked by faded chairs with plush backs and curtains cascading 30 feet like waterfalls of brocade. A cold, silvery light glowed from somewhere impossibly high, like the moon hidden behind layers of paint. Hermione's eyes were wide. It was too much to take in at once. Her neck ached from how often she turned her head. Harry, who'd been in the room of hidden things before, strode forward with purpose, eyes scanning for the Horcrux. Malfoy, who had spent weeks in here last year, had his hands in his pockets and glanced around only reluctantly. "This place is unbelievable," Ron whispered. "I know," Hermione whispered back. The room felt sacred, like a library of ancient secrets. Harry glanced over his shoulder. "Hermione, anything?" She jumped. The Marauder's map drooped in her hand. She was supposed to be watching Snape, since Harry knew the Horcrux's appearance and needed to stay focused. But the room had distracted her. She scanned the parchment. "All clear," she said, hurrying after Harry and Malfoy. "He and Hagrid are still in the middle of the forest." "I don't get it," Ron said, jogging to catch up, eyes on the mountains of clutter. "How could you know who think he was the only one who knew about this place? It's full of stuff." "You can find it without knowing what you found," Harry said. "Fred and George found it by accident. So did Dumbledore. I bet most of this came from students who only stumbled in once and could never find it again." "That doesn't explain this," Ron said, pointing at a towering stack of yellowed sofas piled like a bonfire. "Oh, honestly, you too." Hermione sighed. "Students didn't do this." "Didn't you read the material I wrote for SPW?" Harry and Ron exchanged guilty looks. Harry began. "If you had read the pamphlet I handed out last September, you'd know the Hogwarts house elves are the ones who repair, maintain, and dispose of all magically damaged or dangerous objects. Even when it risks their safety, right?" said Ron. "And that means, what, exactly?" Hermione bristled. He was trying not to laugh. Ron had warmed to house elves over the years. He'd even grown fond of Dobby, but he still treated Creature badly, and now he was being dismissive again. "It's not funny, Ron," she said sharply. "All this," she gestured around, "is the result of centuries of enslavement. Look at all this work. Not a single canute was paid. Not a thank you. Not even recognition. It's just another way to shove it out of sight so wizards don't have to think about what they've done, what they're still doing." Harry looked uneasy. Ron seemed unsure. But Malfoy, no longer pretending not to hear, snapped, "Granger, would you give it a rest? House elves don't even want freedom." He tilted his chin toward the clutter. "You couldn't get this lot to stop working if you offered them everything in Gringotts. They love serving wizards." Ron looked more shaken by that than anything Hermione had said, and she knew why. He'd used the same argument in the past. It stung to hear it from someone like Malfoy. She turned her anger on Malfoy. "Oh, really?" she said, her voice rising. "And how would you know what they want? Have you ever talked to an elf without ordering them around? Tell me, while Dobby lived in your house, how many times did you ask about his thoughts or feelings? Say more than 0. And I'll swallow fiend fire. That's not the..." "Yes, it is the point. Other wizards can claim ignorance. They think they're elves like it because those elves have never been given a chance to imagine freedom. But you don't even have that excuse." Dobby hated being enslaved. He was overjoyed to be free. Malfoy held his ground. "Oh yeah? And why do you care?" "Let me guess, just another way to prove you're better than everyone else. Your hero complex is worse than Potter's." Hermione let out a sharp, tense laugh. "Why do I care? Why do you think I care? Why would someone like me care about how thinking, feeling beings are treated like property? You really don't think that has any personal meaning for me?" The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Hermione hadn't expected her words to land so hard. Ron looked stunned. Harry had stopped searching and was staring at her, as if he was hearing her for the first time. Malfoy's expression was shifting strangely. His sneer wavered, and his eyes, shadowed and unreadable, kept flicking away from her, then back again. Like it hurt to look at her, but he couldn't stop. "Let's split up," Hermione said tightly. "It'll be faster." Harry, she looked at him, the only one she wasn't upset with. "Let's go left." "You two go right." Ron and Malfoy didn't argue. They turned away, walking several feet apart in silence. Harry looked unsure. "I'm sorry," Hermione murmured as they started left, eyes on the map though she wasn't reading it. "I didn't mean to waste time. We should be looking." "No," Harry said quickly. "It's fine." "Really?" Hermione swallowed hard. Her eyes stung. She hated this habit she'd developed lately, how she couldn't talk about what mattered without tearing up. It always made Harry uncomfortable. Ron would act like someone had died. "They're still in the forest," she said, pocketing the map. "We have time." "Good," said Harry. "That's..." He stopped suddenly. His face went blank. "Harry," she asked. He pointed ahead, then sprinted toward an open cabinet. Inside was a bust wearing a wig. Hermione's heart jumped. She ran after him. They reached it together and stood, staring at the lost diadem. "Is that..." she whispered. "Yeah," Harry said. "I can see the inscription." She stepped beside him. The words were clear. "Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure." Harry reached for it, but Hermione caught his elbow. "You're just going to touch it? What else am I supposed to do? Just wait." She raised her wand and aimed it at the tiara, Hashia Revelio. The tiara sat still, glinting dully in the pale light. "Finite incantatum," Hermione said, flicking her wand. Then, with a practiced motion she'd rehearsed all through July, she added, "Scatus dicoperare." Still nothing. What was that supposed to do? Harry asked. "It should have revealed any major curses." "All right then," Harry said. He reached forward, a bit more cautiously this time. Hermione held her breath. His fingers touched the diadem. Nothing happened. No surge of magic. No scream. No curse. Hermione exhaled a long, relieved sigh, her shoulders sagging. "Dramatic," Harry muttered. They met eyes, and both let out a quiet, shaky laugh. "Hey, you two!" Harry called out. "We found it." Ron's triumphant shout echoed down the aisle, and moments later he and Malfoy jogged over. "That's it?" Ron asked, eyeing the diadem. "Doesn't look like much." "It's been sitting here for who knows how long," Harry said. "Look, it has her house motto on it." He handed it to Ron, who took it hesitantly, frowning. "I can feel it." "I would hope so, Weasley," Malfoy muttered, eyeing the Horcrux warily. "No, you prat." "I mean I can feel something inside it," Ron said, holding it out to Hermione. "Hermione, look." Their eyes met for the briefest moment, and both looked away quickly. Ron's ears turned red. Hermione's cheeks warmed, but the Horcrux took her attention. The moment she touched it, she felt what Ron meant, something pulsing inside, slow and cold, like a weak heartbeat. She shivered. "I don't like it," she said. "What should we do with it?" "Put it in that bag of yours," Ron said. "I don't know," Harry replied. "We can't lose this." "Yeah, but what else are we supposed to do? Wear it?" Hermione's grip tightened. "Hold on," she said softly. "That's an idea." They all stared at her like she'd suggested they raise a blast-ended scrot as a pet. "You don't think that'd be a bit obvious, Granger?" Malfoy said dryly. Unlike Ron, he met her gaze without hesitation, his earlier sneer fully restored. Strangely, Hermione found this comforting. At least she didn't have to tread carefully around him. "I don't mean wear it for safekeeping," she huffed. "Ravenclaw made this to enhance intelligence." If one of us puts it on, maybe we'll figure out how to steal the sword back from the Ministry before the Death Eaters grab it. Maybe even something about the locket or the cup. We might be missing something obvious. I don't know, Hermione, Harry said, sounding uneasy. Remember Dumbledore's hand? That happened when he put on the Horcrux ring. He only survived because his face twisted. Snape helped him. Well, maybe Snape wasn't really trying to help him, Ron muttered. Maybe, Harry said slowly. But I still don't like the odds of Voldemort. Both Ron and Malfoy flinched. Stop saying his name, will you? Ron snapped. No, Harry said firmly. Dumbledore said it, and so will I, yeah, but, look, Hermione cut in, we don't have time. Dumbledore's will was read on Monday. That was 3 days ago. The Death Eaters could already have realized his bequests are at the Ministry. If they deliver the sword to Voldemort, we'll never get it back. She inhaled sharply, struck by a worse thought. And he knows the diary was destroyed. What if he tries to replace it, makes the sword into a new Horcrux? Then he'd have one from each founder, just like he planned from the start. The boys were staring at her, faces full of dread. Harry spoke first, voice hoarse. I think you're right. That's exactly what he'd do. And then, he might check on the others, and if he finds one missing, he'll know we're hunting them, said Ron. Their eyes fell to the diadem in Hermione's hands. I'll do it. She said, No, you won't, Ron snapped, reaching out. Give it here. I'm supposed to be sick, remember? If something goes wrong, you can say Spattergroit got worse. Send me back to my family, no, Harry said. If anyone's putting that on, it's me. Oh, Harry, don't be ridiculous, Hermione said. You're the face of the Order now that Dumbledore's gone. What do you think people will do if you die too? It would crush the resistance. Harry shook his head. That doesn't matter. You two could keep hunting Horcruxes. Dumbledore gave this task to 3 of us. If I died, there would still be 3, wouldn't there? A heavy silence fell, the 3 of them, Harry, Hermione, and Ron, looked toward Malfoy. Alarm flickered across his face. In the ghostly light of the room, he looked even paler than usual, lips bloodless. It seemed to dawn on him, maybe for the first time, that there was a choice. I'm not. He began, but didn't finish. After a pause, he added, attempting a sneer, I'm not putting that thing on. The 3 of you can play the hero all you want. You can't make me touch it. It broke the tension just enough. At least he's consistent, Ron sighed. Now hand it over, Hermione. He reached for the diadem, but she stepped back. She tossed her beaded bag to Harry, who caught it on instinct. If it causes physical injuries, there's essence of Dittany in the bag. She said quickly. If it's poison, there's a Bezoar. For anything else, Madame Pomfrey's in the infirmary. Hermione, no. Ron shouted, lunging forward, but she was already placing the diadem on her head. Time seemed to freeze. Ron stopped in his tracks. He and Harry stared at her, stricken with fear. Malfoy flinched, made a jerky movement, then froze, eyes locked on the tiara. No one moved. At first, Hermione felt nothing. Not even the cold metal, her hair cushioned it. Then something changed. It wasn't pain, it was relief, like a breath of cool air easing through her mind. Her thoughts, once chaotic, slowed. The anxiety, the pressure, the anger, everything settled. Voldemort with the sword. The hunt for the remaining Horcruxes. Her arguments with Ron and Malfoy. Her worry about the burrow. They all remained, but they untangled, like potions ingredients settling into separate vials. It's a Horcrux, she reminded herself. It's dangerous, but it didn't feel dangerous. It felt like someone had finally removed a clamp from her brain. I'm all right, she said calmly. Ron and Harry exhaled together, visibly sagging with relief. But Malfoy kept staring at her, his face unmoved, still full of disbelief. The sword, Hermione said. We're facing two separate problems with it. First, we need it to destroy Horcruxes. Second, we have to stop Voldemort from turning it into a new, active Horcrux. We have to treat those as separate issues. They might have different solutions. All right, said Harry. Which one do we solve first? His voice sounded distant. Hermione didn't answer. Normally she felt like she could pull answers from a textbook in her head, but now it was as if entire libraries were opening inside her mind, information flowing together like constellations in the sky. Why limit themselves to the sword? Surely other goblin-made weapons had absorbed basilisk venom or Calicot blood, which she remembered reading was also toxic enough to destroy a Horcrux. The Calicot had gone extinct in 1829, but 9 wizards had slain them throughout history. 2 of them were famous enough to have displays in wizarding museums, one in Dresden, one in Nairobi. While the records didn't explain how the creatures were slain, it was possible they had used goblin-made swords. In the 1700s, enchanted swords had been as fashionable as wands. Hermione? Ron said gently. She gave her head a small shake and shut her eyes. Dresden and Nairobi weren't viable options. Leaving the country would be risky. She moved on. What else could work? Fiendfire. Too dangerous. They'd need a sealed, warded test environment, maybe in the Department of Mysteries or St. Mungo's isolation ward. Could the Room of Requirement act as a sealed chamber? Perhaps. But the enchantments were unknown. If it failed, they could destroy Hogwarts itself. Not Fiendfire, then. Not yet. Calicot blood? Unless a fanatic collector had preserved a specimen, that wasn't going to help. The curse of devouring? No. Fatal, basilisk venom. A voice from memory rose up. Ron, sitting on his bed during a Horcrux strategy meeting, joking, well, lucky we've got such a large supply of basilisk fangs, then. I was wondering what we were going to do with them. The answer hit Hermione like a spark. She laughed out loud. What? Harry asked, watching her take off the diadem. We don't need the sword to destroy Horcruxes, she said. We're right above the Chamber of Secrets. The basilisk's body is still down there. Harry and Ron both gasped. Let's go, Harry said immediately, already sprinting toward the door. They all ran together. You sure you're okay? Ron asked, glancing at her. I'm fine, Ron. I feel completely normal. Actually, she stopped short, looking down at the Marauder's map, and the diadem's calming effects shattered in an instant. What? She gasped, freezing in place at the door. What is it? Harry said urgently. Hermione shoved the map at him. He and Ron bent over it. The castle, mostly empty for the summer, showed only a handful of names. Snape was crossing the grounds at an impossible speed, for more were nearly at the front doors. Geoffrey Deworst, Alecto Carrow, Amicus Carrow, and Corban Yaxley. Malfoy was the first to speak. We need to get out. Now. How did they know? Hermione whispered. You don't think Hagrid said something, do you? Ron asked. It doesn't matter, Harry said grimly. We have to get to the chamber. Fast. Snape's flying. He must be on a broom. The chamber? Malfoy said, disbelieving. We need to run. What good is a basilisk fang if Snape catches you? They can't find us down there, Harry snapped. They don't speak Parseltongue. We'll be safe. What, and just wait there to starve? Snape lives here, Potter. Hermione clutched the diadem tighter, and felt another wave of calming magic wash over her. A voice in her mind soothed her, told her not to worry. If the Death Eaters found them, she could simply wear the diadem, fight, and win with ease. She shook her head, disoriented, and stuffed the diadem into her beaded bag. Her fingers felt oddly empty. Harry's right. We should get to the chamber while we can. Either way, getting out of the castle is going to be dangerous. Fine, Malfoy said tightly. But I'm taking the invisibility cloak. Ron let out a disbelieving laugh. No, you bloody well aren't. I can't be seen, Weasley. Malfoy hissed. If any of them recognize me, I'll have to kill them. Do you get that? There was a pause. Malfoy ran a hand through his pale hair. For a fleeting moment, he glanced at Hermione. She felt a strange twist in her stomach, remembering the way his hand had yanked hers when his father killed Dolohov. Had he been preparing himself to do the same ever since? Malfoy turned back to Harry and Ron, who looked horrified by his words. There's no other way, Malfoy said, face wild. If the Dark Lord finds out I'm alive, he'll know my parents are alive. He'll hunt us down. He'll make an example of us. Harry shoved the cloak into his hands. Malfoy went silent, blinking in surprise. Ron looked equally shocked. Malfoy took the cloak and slipped it over himself without another word. You'll have to read the map for us. Then, Hermione said, if we're disillusioned, we won't be able to read it. It'll just reflect the background. Hermione, Ron said uneasily. He didn't need to say more. She knew what he meant. If Malfoy had both the invisibility cloak and the map, he could abandon them, vanish, and save himself. It was a tense moment. Malfoy had helped them. He'd sneered, mocked, and dragged his feet, but he'd helped. Still, could they trust him with their most valuable tools? She thought of Snape's cold expression as he murdered Dumbledore. Were they making the same mistake? But then she remembered something else, that split second under the wedding marquee. Malfoy's spell, his body slamming into hers. Shielding her, she wasn't sure he'd leave them to die. It's fine, Harry said quietly. He needs us. He turned to the invisible shape where Malfoy stood. You need us to get back to your parents. A moment passed, then Malfoy's hand appeared, reaching out and taking the map from Hermione. I know, he said coldly. Thanks for the reminder, Potter. 3 disillusionment charms later, they were racing through the castle, leaping down staircases 2 at a time. Draco did his best to lead them to the second-floor bathroom, but the Gryffindors kept pulling ahead. Without being able to see each other clearly, they couldn't stay close. It was like trying to herd cats. Where's Snape? Harry called. Breathing hard, in the Great Hall, Draco said. He's probably checking the ground floor. Anyone near the bathroom? Ron panted as they raced down the spiral staircase so fast it made Draco dizzy. Not yet. Left here, he whispered. Left here, Weasley. They slipped into the 4th-floor corridor. At the far end stood Amicus Carrow, squat, lumpy, and clearly warped by years of dark curses. Just in time, Ron veered around the corner where Hermione's barely visible arm was frantically waving him forward. Carrow didn't seem to spot their shimmering outlines, but he paused every few steps to bark out, finite incantatem. The spell rushed down the corridor. Their disillusionment charms held. Come on, Draco hissed, leading them down a narrow stairway hidden behind a tapestry. They crept through the 2nd floor toward the girls' bathroom, tension rising with each step. Then Draco saw it. On the map, 2 dots were closing in from opposite sides of the hallway, Alecto, Carrow, and Dewhurst. He breathed. They're flanking us. We can't keep going. Malfoy, the bathroom's right there, Harry whispered. I know. But if we head that way, we'll be trapped between them. Which way then? Hermione asked. That corridor behind us. It's our only, but there's 4 of us, Ron whispered. We've got surprise. What if we rush Alecto, stun her, and hide her in the bathroom? I'm not risking. Everything exploded at once. Dewhurst appeared behind them. At the same moment, a black dot marked Corban Yaxley entered a portrait passage near Ravenclaw Tower, one that exited right in front of them. Yaxley, spotting Dewhurst at the far end of the hall, spun around and shouted, Finite incantatem. A flash of red-gold light surged toward them. Harry reacted first. Protego. He bellowed, the spell ricocheted, missing Yaxley by inches. It's him. Yaxley shouted. It's Potter. He repeated the spell as they bolted down the hall, away from the bathroom. This one, this one. Draco gasped, lunging for a nearby door. It burst open. They all piled inside as another curse blasted past the hallway. Colloportus. Hermione panted, sealing the door with a flick of her wand as they charged through the narrow passage. Where does this lead? Harry asked, no longer whispering. The dungeons. Draco replied. Is Snape still in the Great Hall? No. He's in the entrance hall now, right by the front doors. Good, Harry growled. Let him try to stop us. Draco stared at him like he'd gone mad. Don't be an idiot, Potter. Snape could wipe out all four of us with his wand hand behind his back. He's been the Dark Lord's favorite since our age. Behind them, they could hear more voices. Alecto, Yaxley, Deworst, all closing in. What do we do? What do we do? Hermione was panicking now. Then it hit Draco like a flash of lightning. My common room, he blurted. The Slytherin common room. No one will think to look for us there. Perfect, Hermione gasped as they burst into the dungeons. Which way? This way, Harry said, turning left. You, what? Draco chased after him. How do you know where it is? Ron laughed breathlessly. Not the time. They skidded to a stop in front of a stone wall Draco knew like his own skin. Hydrus, he said, praying the password hadn't changed. The wall sank back and slid aside. Relief flooded Draco. Clutching the stitch in his side, he staggered through the doorway. The others followed close behind. The door shut and vanished. Sealing them in, they removed their disillusionments, and Draco pulled off the invisibility cloak, panting. He'd expected it to feel suffocating, but somehow, air passed easily through the magical fabric. He let it glide over his hand. He would never admit it to Potter, but he'd never seen anything like this cloak, not even at Borgin and Burke's, where they stocked entire racks of high-end invisibility gear. This one had to be brand new. Maybe they'd bought it just for the Horcrux hunt. As his breath slowed, Draco finally looked around the common room, and it hit him, hard. He hadn't prepared for the flood of memories. It overwhelmed him. His eyes landed first on the corner sofa. His spot, crabs, and goyles. They'd spent endless afternoons there pretending to do homework, mostly failing, always ending up laughing until their sides hurt. Next, the carved stone fireplace. He remembered the night Pansy had leaned against it, their first kiss in 4th year. She'd looked up at him through her dark lashes like she knew all the answers. That had been Pansy. Her lips had been soft and uncertain. They'd laughed about it afterward, nervous and giddy. A lump rose in his throat. He looked toward the windows, long and greenish from the lake outside. He remembered curling up in the far one like a hammock the afternoon of his first OWL, sunlight filtering through the water. He'd drifted off as the quiet chatter of his housemates filled the air. Back when all he worried about were grades, it seemed so far away now, like something out of a fairy tale. He couldn't say when that world had ended. He used to blame Potter for the disgrace at the Department of Mysteries, for everything. But really, it had started before that. Until the end of 4th year, his parents wrote him twice a week, full of news from the Ministry, Wizarding Society, and family matters. By 5th year, their letters came less often. Once a week. Then every 2 weeks. Then once a month. They sounded distant, and when he came home for Christmas, they made him stay in his room whenever other Death Eaters visited. He'd hated that, being treated like a child, until the night he heard someone screaming down the hall. He didn't remember what excuse he gave himself, but he'd made one. Something that fit the future he thought he was destined for, that the person deserved it, that he would never scream like that, because he would never fail. He was his father's son, and there was nothing to fear. They'd all caught their breath now. This won't buy us much time, Harry said. If they tell Snape they lost us in the dungeons, he might check here. I don't suppose there's a secret Slytherin way out of the castle? Ron asked. Just in case you lot wanted to turn tail and flee? Draco didn't dignify that with a response. Hermione was frowning. If we were in Gryffindor Tower, we could summon brooms and fly out the windows. Very useful, Draco said dryly, Let's open one of those, Draco said, gesturing lazily at the windows, and flood the school, shall we? Harry and Hermione both turned to the glass, actually considering it. How deep do you reckon it is? Harry asked. The light's still fairly clear, Hermione said. And the dungeons go much deeper. This can't be more than 15 or 20 feet down. The lake's not too bad, Harry said. The Mare people are a bit odd, but they're not dangerous. Hermione, do you think you could do that bubblehead charm Cedric and Fleur used during the second task? Let me check. Hermione sat on one of the black leather sofas, pulled out her beaded bag, and began digging through it. Hold on, Ron said. How are we supposed to stop this place from flooding? Not that I'd mind surprising the Slytherins, but we're not flooding this room, Draco snapped. You're not touching it. Ron looked at him in surprise but didn't argue. No, of course not, Hermione said distractedly, still rummaging through her bag, pulling out books and feeding them back through the tiny opening. Hold on. Got it. She pulled out a book titled Adventurer's Charms for the Wild. I practiced a few of these before our OWLS. The bubblehead charm should be a derivative of one of them. As she flipped through the pages, Ron sank onto another sofa, scuffing his shoe on the thick Persian rug. I still don't get how they found us, he muttered. Yeah, Harry said. Draco stiffened, waiting for the accusation. Any moment now, they'd blame him. They'd claim he'd summoned the Death Eaters on purpose, only to get cold feet and help them escape, just like they said he couldn't kill Dumbledore. He could already hear the whole argument in his head. His heart was pounding, tight with anger and defensiveness, but Harry's voice was quiet. I couldn't still have the trace on me, could I? Impossible, mate, Ron said. It ends at 17. Wizarding law. Harry let out a breath. Slow and shaken, and Draco realized he wasn't afraid of being betrayed. He was afraid he had endangered them. Draco thought back to the room of hidden things, the way they'd argued over who would wear the diadem, each willing to put themselves at risk. He thought of Hermione, standing tall as she placed the cursed object on her head, despite her fear. He glanced at her now, flipping eagerly through the pages. With a book in front of her, she looked more like herself than she had in weeks. She could have died in that room. Draco couldn't make sense of it. Why would someone so desperate to protect the people she loved risk her life like that? Wasn't it her responsibility to stay alive for them? What use was dying for someone if you never lived for them instead? Here. Hermione said, looking up, and her eyes met Draco's. He turned away quickly, heart racing. He knew he was being ridiculous. She couldn't possibly guess what he was thinking. Even if she could, he could shut her out in an instant. Bella had said he was a natural at occlumency. That memory still gave him pride. Bella never complimented anyone. Good news, Hermione announced, standing up. It is a derivative of the clean air charm. I thought so. Harry looked up from the map. Hermione, I think they're telling Snape. You'll have to hurry. Her face shifted instantly, excitement replaced by nerves. She bit her lip, shoulders tense, knuckles white around her wand. Draco rolled his eyes. What a brilliant move. Tell the person who chokes under pressure that she's running out of time. Don't be stupid, Potter, Draco said lazily, casting a look at the door. Yaxley doesn't even know you're in the castle, and even if he did, why would he think you could get into the Slytherin common room? He looked back at Hermione. No, I think we've got plenty of time to watch you mess this up. Her shoulders lowered, and she glared at him. The panic had dimmed a little. I'm not going to mess up. Yeah, Ron added quickly. When have you ever seen her mess up a spell, Malfoy? Fine. Prove me wrong. Draco leaned back against a limestone pillar, arms crossed. Hermione sniffed. Set the book on the back of an armchair, and drew a symbol in the air with her wand. Ainai, she said, then completed the charm with Anasaris. Immediately, a shimmering, glassy bubble expanded around her head. It couldn't contain all of her hair, but she smiled as she inhaled cleanly through the charm. Draco shrugged. We all get lucky sometimes. She rolled her eyes and moved on to Harry and Ron. When she finally turned to Draco, raising her wand, he flinched. He hated that. Would he ever stop reacting that way? Her eyes lingered on his face, then dropped to his hand, which had moved toward his wand. She didn't mention it. Ready? She asked, her voice muffled by her own bubble. He nodded. She cast the charm. Malfoy, Harry said quickly, I was right. They're coming this way. He and Ron stood up, their faces distorted inside the magical bubbles. Draco's bubble made everything glossy and warped, but the air inside felt like spring, cool and clean. Fine, Draco said, striding to the window. How exactly are we getting out? Banishing charm, Hermione said, grabbing her bag. Straight a duro. Steps sprang from the stone wall, leading up to the high windows. They scrambled up. As they crouched on the windowsill, Hermione waved her wand. The stone steps collapsed behind them with a series of thuds. Voices were echoing behind the common room door. You three use the banishing charm, Harry said. I'll cut through. On my count. Now. Draco, Hermione, and Ron all swept their wands in the same motion. The water outside bent backwards like a giant bubble was forming around the window. Defendo. Harry said, and a square of glass fell inward with a heavy clunk. Go. The map first, Hermione said, tucking it into her beaded bag. She tapped it with her wand. Impervious. Then they all slipped through the window and dove into the lake, underwater, the banishing charm held as they turned back. Wingardium Leviosa, Harry murmured. The square of glass lifted back into place. With a quiet reparo, it sealed shut. It was as if they had never been there. Harry glanced back at the others and gave a nod. Draco raised his wand as Hermione and Ron did the same. The lake slammed back into place against the window, sucking them briefly toward the castle. Then they kicked hard, swimming upward and away. Draco looked back as they swam. The Slytherin common room's row of windows glowed faintly behind them, casting pale light into the deep water like a memory already slipping away. Within a minute, it vanished completely. They spent the night in a mountain cave outside Hogsmeade. The downside, it was still a cave. The upside, it was big enough that Draco could pretend he wasn't technically sharing a space with 3 Gryffindors. They'd split the cave. Draco on one side of the fire, the others on the opposite. They transfigured rocks into pillows, leaves into blankets, and through the cave's mouth, the stars streaked across the night sky. The moment Hagrid had let them out through the gamekeeper's gate, Draco had wanted to apparate as far as possible. But Hermione had insisted they stay nearby. The cave was sheltered, and tomorrow they could transfigure disguises to buy supplies in Hogsmeade. You don't think that's risky? Harry asked, still shivering as he dried his robes with a charm. It's less risky than anywhere else, Hermione replied. Hogsmeade is full of people. No one will notice us. What's one more group of strangers? Fine, Draco muttered. As long as we contact the Order first thing tomorrow. The others exchanged an exasperated look. He ignored it. It wasn't until they'd all settled that Draco realized how tired he was. It was hard to believe the burrow and the wedding had been just hours ago, but when he lay down and closed his eyes, he didn't fall asleep. Instead, he became aware of the others whispering. They probably thought they were far enough away, but the shape of the cave ceiling carried their voices straight to him. Wish the cloak were a bit bigger, Harry murmured. Would come in handy. Remember when all 3 of us could fit under it? Ron whispered. There seemed to be a lot more room in first year. Hermione said, and Draco could hear the smile in her voice. First year? Draco thought. Most invisibility cloaks started unraveling after just a few years. Harry's looked brand new. It must be something rare, maybe even one of a kind. It's going well so far, isn't it? Ron said. Day 1 of the quest and we've already got a Horcrux. Keep this up, and you know who's finished by next weekend. Draco heard their stifled laughter ripple through the cave. Shame about the fangs, Harry said. But we know they're there. If we can't get the sword, maybe we come back to Hogwarts or get someone at the school to fetch one for us." They murmured in agreement. Then Ron said, "Look, Hermione. We wanted to. I'm sorry. Both of us are, all right? We didn't realize what SPEW meant to you." Draco's stomach dropped. He no longer wanted to listen, but he couldn't stop himself. He didn't want to think about the fire in Hermione's voice when she asked how he treated Dobby, or the pain in her eyes when she said it was personal. He'd spent the swim across the lake telling himself she'd never really cared what he'd called her, that it hadn't affected her, so why did it matter? He tried not to listen, but his ears strained for her voice. She didn't respond for a long time, so long he thought maybe he'd missed it. Then she whispered, "I don't want you to apologize to me. I know you care about me. It's not that. I didn't start SPW because of how Muggleborns are treated. I started it because we should all care how everyone is treated. And sometimes I wish you'd take that seriously. Even when it's creature." Harry offered, "Exactly." Draco thought it was ridiculous, crying over house elves. Absolutely absurd, but he had memories of Dobby. Back at the manor, the elf had scurried about polishing things and punishing himself, always wringing his hands. As a child, Draco found it funny, the bat-like ears, the tea towel outfit, the blind obedience. He used to make Dobby play games when Crabbe and Goyle weren't around. Draco would be the hero. Dobby, the monster. When Draco inevitably won, he'd order Dobby to do something humiliating, like sit in a dark closet for 4 hours. And he'd go check on him halfway through, not out of kindness, but just to feel the weight of control. Now, those memories left a sour taste in his mouth, but he pushed it down. He'd been 7, maybe 8. How was he supposed to know the elf was miserable? That he even could be miserable, if Dobby had ever hinted at displeasure, his father would have punished him harshly. Really, he thought, are you going to waste time feeling guilty about how you treated an elf as a child? If he started feeling bad about that, what next? Katie Bell? Weasley? He'd never let himself think too much about those incidents. Because guilt didn't help. They'd either recover or they wouldn't, whether or not he cared, and he'd had his own life to worry about. There were reasons he'd done what he did. Was he supposed to feel guilty for trying to survive? Was that what Granger wanted, for everyone to crawl around in shame, never thinking of themselves? Is that how she'd put on the diadem? He closed his eyes tighter, shadows flashing on the inside of his eyelids. Clear your mind, Aunt Bella had said. Wipe everything away, doubt, shame, guilt. He succeeded, except for one image, Hermione's face, lowering the diadem onto her head, terrified and defiant.